Deb. Don't say anything. We're being recorded. You're on mute.
Is my
You've got my note. You've got my note.
my screen showing up okay?
Yeah, yeah.
Should we start with environmental stewardship?
Yes, I think we might be able to blend some of the discussion about vehicle access and walkability and stuff as well. That's caring community.
Yeah.
So,
That's our next one, right? That's the one
Yeah.
you're doing. Yep.
no, I'm doing communication, connectivity.
Connectivity, my apologies. That's above.
That's all right.
Okay.
Hey, Nancy, do you mind taking notes?
Nancy's.
I'm taking notes.
Okay.
Hi, Christina.
Hi.
Hi, Dawn.
Let's see, why am I not? Yeah.
You're on mute, Dawn.
Yeah, I know. Hi,
All
Bob.
right. Hi, Don. So why don't we get started here? I'm Bob Zog. I'll start with environmental stewardship, and hopefully you can see the screen here. I'm going to move to the next slide. I'm going to start by introducing the value statement that we have for environmental stewardship and just ask participants to react to this and indicate if this really rings true for Carlisle. Does this resonate for Carlisle? Go ahead,
I was
Christine.
holding-
I can tell you're thinking.
Yeah, no, I was holding off speaking because I've already spoken on this in the last forum, so I was like not trying to take up people's time. I think it does.
Okay.
I was a bit more controversial. On the last forum, I said that I think we would like to value natural resources, and I didn't know if we actually do because our carbon footprint is so high.
Yeah, this idea of greenwashing came up, and there's some who would like to create the perception, and there's others who would actually like to do the job. So what do you think, Don? Does this statement on the screen resonate with you?
I'm not sure I know what resilience to climate change means.
Excellent question. In a nutshell, what resilience recognizes that some amount of environmental change is now inevitable because we've just gone too far down the road without taking corrective action. So we're going to see changes in our weather and our climate. And this really gets to the need to protect people, to protect property, to protect infrastructure from changes in our environment that we think are going to come, maybe more floods, more droughts, more storms, and that kind of a thing. Does that make sense?
Yes, but I would also like to think that as a community, we are trying to make real steps in reducing the impact of reducing our carbon output and reducing climate change. We're slowing it down.
That's a really good point. It came up on Thursday night that it was our intent to capture that, but it's not as explicit as it could be. So that's a really good observation. Okay, just in interest of time, I'm going to roll out the goals here. There's 5, and this is in a little bit more detail than what Alexa showed, but just quickly to orient you to these policies really get to things we can do through zoning or bylaws or things like pay as you throw at the dump. They go a little bit beyond education and awareness building and that sort of thing, and really do more to encourage or even compel, in some cases, certain types of actions. The state has set goals to reduce carbon by at least 85%, carbon emissions by 85% by 2050. So should we set goals similar to those? This bullet really gets to community-wide reductions in energy, water, and solid waste, i.e., non-recyclable materials. And then we get into some things that touch upon the resiliency, protecting our water and our wetlands, and again, protecting the community from impacts of climate change. So just want to open it up to discussion for a few minutes and get reactions to these goals. Do they make sense? Do we need to add any? Are there any here that we could combine or eliminate? If there's any you disagree with, please let us know.
Well, I had time to process one thing that was said, actually a number of things that were said at the last forum, and I would agree with the notion that somebody brought up, that aligning with the state goals, we might want to exceed the state goals if we can. So, maybe at a minimum to align with the state goals. And maybe finding ways to have people sort of put their money where their mouth is.
That's a good
to be
point.
blunt, sorry.
Many experts have concluded that we need to get to essentially zero net emissions by 2050 to really prevent a lot of damage. So.
I mean, there are things that in this, again, I'm going to say we talk about the consumption of energy, but we don't talk about the consumption of carbon, which is the embodied carbon, and things like when you repair the roads or create new roads, you use blacktop, and in when we concrete, for instance, is a really bad material to be using whenever we build something. So I think it has to be instead of reduce. I mean, there needs to be something else, because we know that consumption of energy is only 50% of the problem.
Yeah, it's an excellent point, and that really underlines reusing rather than building or making new every time, and adapting what we have as opposed
or
to
adapting the way we do things, like how we run the town. I mean, I'm someone that really questions why every small town in Massachusetts needs to have the same police station and with the same sort of cells and education breakout rooms and this, that, and the next thing, when other countries manage on less. So, and it's not just our town. I think the thing is, it's just not our town, it's the state as well. And how we manage things, as a state. But that's going a bit bigger.
And as individuals.
Yeah, well, it means I think you have to be politically active, because that's the way you get to change things at the state level. It's not just grassroots, was what I'm trying to say, is that you need to have people saying this is not, we can't go on this way. We can't have gas guzzling cruisers, police cruisers, for instance. They should be electric. School buses should be electric.
good point.
Yeah. And I'll just bring up something that I brought up the last time, but I think it's really important. And I know there are a few residents focusing on this, but I don't know how town-wide it is, but what we introduce to the environment. I mean, we're introducing so many chemicals, plastics, of course, but in addition to that, so many chemicals are being introduced, and I think that needs to sort of be addressed more, from mosquito spraying, from pesticides, from herbicides. Yeah, I think that's going to have an increasingly negative effect.
Okay, well, time flies and we're having fun. We should switch over to connectivity and access, and I'll let Deborah take over at this point.
Yeah, so this is a sort of an umbrella values, I guess, because it deals with the physical issue of connectivity, as in how do we get around town, and how do we cope, because we're so rural, how do we help non-drivers? But it also deals with, now with the age of a pandemic, the connectivity within the town electronically, and also how the town hall could work better. So those are the issues. Do you want to put up the values? Can you change that slide, Bob?
Should have the value statement.
Yeah. The next slide, I think it's the next slide, is it? The one that actually breaks it out.
Oh,
So
you're not
these are the
seeing it?
issues. Yeah, that's it. I can see it. So these are the issues. So this is the value. So I just wondered about, like, before it did, what is your feelings about this value? Anyone got any?
I guess, yeah. I mean, outside from the master plan steering committee meetings that I attend, I can't say that I had given this much thought. Just, but I'm also not a very techie person, and although I've enjoyed the trails, I can't say that I use them to get from point A to point B. But I can see, and I've got no kids in the school system, so for me personally, it's like, okay, but I can see that there is value in geographic connectivity. And I would see that things could be a lot more efficient, and the community could be brought together even more so, even though I think that we do have a community that is incredibly tight in comparison to a lot of other communities. But I'm sure that, both technology and social ways of encouraging this, I think, of course, it's good.
Okay, do you want to put up the other bits?
Okay, they should be up.
So this is why I'm saying the first two are much more about, the connectivity within the town. However, for me, I don't know, there seems to be a gap of connectivity outside the town, because, we have to go other places to get things. But sure, feel free to argue against me. So maybe we should talk about the transportation first, and then we'll talk about online presence later. So what do you feel about how we could, these goals, or do they need to have other things in them?
I think it would be great if there was some small public transportation way. I'm not talking like huge buses and stuff, but some way to connect to the train system, the T. I would use it. I'd much rather not have to drive into the city, or even drive down into Alewife. So it would be, I think that could be very useful and helpful on many levels.
I mean, there is something called Crosstown Connect in Acton, and you can go to Donlands and park there, and for $1 get taken to South Acton.
Mhm.
But it's sort of not known about it. I don't think they ask for the passport of do you live in Acton when you go on the bus?
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
know, but it's one of these things where I don't know that this is maybe part of the whole communication issue where people don't know what they can do to lower their carbon footprint, which goes back to Bob's section.
Mhm.
Yeah, I really like the first bullet there because it talks about, we can use walking it's not just for recreation anymore, it's for utilitarian purposes. And I don't know how many places there are where we could add short trail sections to connect with roads. We have this already to some extent, but really just make it easier to get around.
Yeah.
What?
The other thing that I thought, I mean, just the electric bikes are really big in the UK. And they have hills in the UK just like we have here, but we don't seem to talk about adopting something like that here. To have electric bikes, to get into Bedford or Concord, so it's a bit easier coming back up the hill. It's going into Concord's okay, it's coming back out.
Mhm.
I don't know, I mean, it just I think this is a very broad subject to just put into one umbrella, but that's my opinion. And then does anyone have any opinions about, our websites and, how the town communicates with what they're doing with us, and how easy is it to work with town hall? Do the committees talk to each other? Anything like that? Any experience with that?
I've had just a little interaction with town hall, and I've had no issues. I mean, the building department, the building inspector was like super helpful and prompt. Yeah, I mean, I've had no issues dealing with town hall. I somewhere I saw, transparent decision making. I think that is hugely important. I think that sometimes that has not happened. I don't think it's been intentional, but I think sometimes it's like, whoa, wait a second, what? How did we get to here, to this decision? But that's also, I think that it goes with the whole volunteerism, or at least people, I think there's so many people in town who are just like, yeah, okay, whatever. Somebody else makes a decision. I'm not going to get involved. I'm not going to be aware. And I think there's a lot of that, which I wish there were more people involved. But I feel like I'm monopolizing. Is nobody else on?
Yeah, Don's listening, I think.
Yeah, I am.
Okay, hi.
I'm listening. Nancy West, I don't know you very well. I only know you very slightly, but I know of you a little more than I know you. And I'd be very interested to hear your thoughts.
As far as this particular question?
Well, as far as what we're doing here and.
Okay, I hadn't been contributing because I'm the note taker and I can't think and write at the same time. So, but I will, I'll answer your question because I appreciate your asking. I think that's very nice of you to ask me specifically.
Be quick. We only have 20 seconds.
Well, then let me turn it over to someone else who has more to say.
No. Okay.
Oh, no.
I think parts of town hall are easier to deal with than others, and I've dealt with a lot of parts of town hall. I think people are frustrated that the DPW is very hard to reach if you don't sort of know the insider's way, which I do. And I think the DPW, like getting a transfer station sticker online, is ridiculously complicated. But the town clerk and the selectman's office and the town manager
Making.
Transparent. I don't know the
How
answer.
do you understand, well, we're about to leave, but anyway, it's just an issue about how decisions are made, if they're made behind closed doors or not, even though we have open meeting law, but, you know, how do we have more people involved in community so that you have transparent decision making?
Well, if you could get people to go to meetings, you would not have, you would still argue about transparency,
All right, that's a good point, John.
but it's very hard to get people to go to meetings. And it's very hard to get people to fill the boards and committee positions that already exist. And how many people in the public, there's like in this meeting today, I think I heard there are 9 people who are not actively involved in the master planning process.
Mm.
You're muted, Debbie.
It's just you and me. So oh, we can go. Oh. And Nancy's coming too. We can all go to, that means we can go to the other one. Oh, Claude's coming because he's the only one that
Oh,
has.
we got to get Claude. Yeah.
Yeah. Claude, we can actually.
Hello, Claude.
Hello. Hello, Bob. Hello, Debbie. Hi, Nancy.
Hi.
So Claude, the
Nancy,
three of us.
you were surrounded by former Energy Task Force group people.
Well, I am totally intimidated.
Well, and Claude is surrounded by master plan people here, so.
Right.
But we know Claude, and he's not timid, so we can just jump right into this.
Absolutely.
So Claude, this is your show, man, and we're going to start with your favorite topic, environmental stewardship. This is our current value statement. Carlisle values natural resource conservation, resilience to climate change, and reduction in the community's impact on the natural environment. What do you think? Does that resonate with Carlisle? Does that ring true?
I would say so. Well, I would say, well, not everybody. Or there's some, what I want to say is, I guess what I should say is that I think everybody values this, but different people have different ideas of what this means.
Okay.
For some people, it means keeping Carlisle the way it is and buying, some conservation land and not cutting any trees down. And that's all it means. And anything else is like a waste of money and a ridiculous posturing something or other thing that we shouldn't be doing.
How could we rephrase that so it's a little more clear? That we mean more than that.
Well, I should say, because some people don't believe in climate change, I'm not among them, but, and so what they value is natural resource conservation, which means don't cut trees down, don't allow any commercial development. And yes, okay, maybe more houses can be built, but but we don't want a lot of them built, and then reduction of the community's impact on the natural environment. I think everybody would agree with that, but don't mess with the transfer station. Let me throw out as much trash as possible, because that all gets trucked out of town. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of this. So, and then there are other people who have a more kind of comprehensive view of the whole thing, including climate change and our impact on communities outside of Carlisle. So, I'm not arguing that this needs to be changed, but I'm just saying that to me, that's sort of the reality of what I've run across in Carlisle.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's jump right into the goal statements. I'm not going to read each of these for you, but I'd like to get your reaction as you read through them as to whether we've captured the right goals. Do we need to add anything? Is there anything we should take off the list because it's not that important or could be combined?
Well, yeah. Well, one thing I've noticed, like sometimes I think with wetland protection, it gets to the point where the sort of extreme nature of some of the, well, I guess this is probably an anomalous case that I'm referring to, so I won't say anything about that. But yeah, I agree with these. I think, you know.
Well, I mean, I think there's sometimes that, going back to when wetland protection doesn't coordinate with other things that are also sustainable, that are, you know.
Right. In other words, I guess what I was, yeah, in general terms, if you have this absolute unbending kind of protection of the wetlands, you can actually cause more environmental damage than if you just say, okay, it's fine, you know, you shouldn't have done that, we'll give you a fine, but you know, we're not going to ask this crazy remediation that burns all these fossil fuels and everything just to get this back to where it was, when in the end that's probably more harmful than just, you know, letting this thing go. You know, not to say that you give people a free ride, but you know, you don't. Yeah.
Well, it was, for instance, the whole issue of trying to get the electric vehicle charging station in the center of town, with all, you know, people not wanting to go through Conscom, so they were saying we don't want to have this in our facility because we don't want to deal with the permitting.
Right.
You know, that was an issue.
Right. Yeah, that's the kind, I guess that's the kind of thing I was sort of, you know, bringing up. And I guess here we don't really talk about, when we talk about municipal consumption, disposal, I think, is an important thing to throw in here.
Yeah, we probably need to make that more clear. We did capture non-recyclable materials, but it's also important not to throw out even
Recyclable materials. Recyclable materials that aren't actually now being recycled because there's no market for them, or there's no plant that can deal with it in the US, you know. That scenario that we hit with paper a couple of years ago.
You know, another thought that came up on Thursday night was noise. Should we include noise pollution?
It's got very quiet last year, have you noticed? And then when the jets came over, that you could tell that the world was coming back because the private,
right, because you see more contrails.
Oh, and the private jets into Hanscom, because I'm on the flight path.
Yep. Yeah, me too. Yeah.
How about the leaf blowers and other things like that?
Yeah, I mean, anything. I mean,
yeah, I mean, that's all.
I'm much more worried about the big trucks that come through town, actually, you know, delivering building goods for people who want bigger houses.
Well, there's also a lot of traffic that comes through that it doesn't even stop in Carlisle.
Yeah.
You know, you sit there at the Rotary and there's quite, I wonder if the modified Rotary has actually reduced the amount of truck traffic that's through town, you know, 225.
I don't know if it has, because that's one of the reasons that the garden club decided to put mulch rather than plants around the edge of the Rotary, is because the plants just get driven over.
Yeah.
With the new design?
Yeah.
More so than the old design?
No, I don't think it changed it much. You'd have to ask the people there.
Mm-hmm.
So just in the last minute before we switch over to connectivity.
Well, actually, it's a perfect segue, isn't it?
Well, I just want to ask Claude a quick question. Is maybe it's not a quick answer. Any action steps that you would recommend that would help us reach any of these goals?
I don't know. I think people have, I think everybody's been doing a good job. It's just really hard. You have pushback and everything from historical commission, conservation commission, town meeting, or in other words, the population in general, let's keep everything the way it is. I read the Mosquito about the town meeting. I was surprised to see that people pushed the police chief on an electric vehicle, and he's talking about a hybrid, and saying, well, yeah, electric maybe next town meeting or for the next cycle of capital that we need for vehicles. So progress is being made, but it's slow, and the technology is also kind of eventually kind of coming out there, because a lot of what we need is new technology. It's not just sort of what we do here in Carlisle, but it's the tools that we have available to us, but they are coming online.
Okay. Well, let's switch over to connectivity.
So
Go ahead, Debbie.
connectivity covers two issues. It covers how do we physically connect with each other and improve that, and also how do we improve the connectivity between the disparate groups in town, including, the school, town hall, how decision making is made. So what I do is I try and split this into two. So we'll talk about walking or transportation, or active travel, whatever you want to call it, first, and then go on to the digital stuff. So this is the value, the umbrella value.
Yeah, I mean, for me, my comment is that I live at the end of two dead-end roads in Carlisle, and through a land swap with my neighbor, I picked up frontage on, so now I have frontage on both dead ends, have for like 20 years, and I built a little walking path that allows people to go from one dead end to the other. And so that's an example, I think, of this kind of connectivity. It would allow kids, without going on a busy Brook Street, to go, from their cul-de-sac to their friend's cul-de-sac. I think that there's a lot of trails that exist in Carlisle, or that could be created to allow people to move around town by just walking through the woods. And I think that should be developed a lot more. So a lot of the trails are kind of designed more so for, well, let's go out for a nice walk in the afternoon, evening, whatever, on Sunday, and do a loop. And it's not of any practical value in terms of getting from one place to another. It might foster a little bit of, social interaction, because sometimes, especially with COVID, you see a lot more people on the trails than you used to. So in that sense, it's sort of our community center are really these trails. Carlisle doesn't have a building, but we have all these trails, and people do run into each other occasionally. But I'm talking about, getting to and from the center, for instance, so the kids could get to school without having to go along the roads, which I think are more dangerous and not as congenial as a nice trail in the woods. So I think that's something that the town should create as a in a more focused and deliberate way, and make it a goal. And I think that would enhance the community and property values if you could sort of demonstrate to people that you have a town where these trails exist, and you're not on a sidewalk listening to the automobiles as they're rushing by, but you really have kind of a nature path, but it's practical. It actually allows you to get to the ice cream stand or the library or the store or the farm stand.
So
without driving.
Yeah. So what do you feel about the non-driving residents? Non-driving residents runs the gamut of from when you're young up to the age of 16, presumably. And then when you are either don't have a car, you know, we've had that issue in town where the Council of Aging has reached out to people and older people.
But are these people able to walk? Or, I mean, certainly the younger ones, most of them I would imagine could walk, but
Or cycle.
or cycle. Well, yeah, so that's another thing. I mean, if you want to make a cycling capable path, that's a little bit more of, you know, a little bit bigger lift, you know, in terms of
I mean, I think the distance is, once you get beyond that 1 mile that Jan was talking about, the 1 mile circle, you know, for me to walk into the center of town, it takes an hour.
mhm,
And then when I do it, I do it. When I do it, I don't usually get a lift back
mhm,
because I don't want to walk back.
mhm.
Because I have to walk on roads, and walking on roads is actually harder on your legs.
Yeah, well, but and it's not even pleasant though. And even if you have I mean, it's much better to have the walking path. Like for you, you could come down once you get to Acton Street where it hits 225. You have that path that takes you all the way up to
No, to the tall fields. That's all it stops. And then
yes,
it's
exactly. So they're, you know, and they've been talking about extending that path up from the center. But I'm talking about even paths that are, you know, further from the road than that.
Oh
you know?
yeah, there. I mean, the old cart paths, for instance.
Right, exactly. There is a cart path. If you were to go down Monroe Hill Road, make a right on Nathan Lane, there's a cart path that, you know, if you had two neighbors who allowed people to go on their border through the woods, you can pick up a cart path that goes through Marjorie Finlay's land all the way to Rockland Road, yeah, and then into town. So and that's a really nice piece of property back there. It's beautiful, and it's an old cart path. I mean, you can, and there's actually a quarry back there, an old quarry.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, that's the kind of path I'm talking about, you know, and really say, hey, this is an important resource that we need to develop to the point, you know, and mark, you know, and sign and so on and so forth, so that people really understand that it's there, and clean it up a little bit, you know, make sure there's no, you know, big rocks in the way and roots and, you know, and fallen branches and things like that. It takes I've done trail maintenance on these things, you know, and the trails committee obviously takes care of their trails, but these other trails also need some maintenance.
Yeah, yeah. It's almost like it should be part of DPW or something, you know?
Yeah, or it could be volunteer, you know, a bigger trails committee, you know, or.
We're gonna run out of time, so I want to mine your experience from being a selectman to talk about how the town could improve communications, not just with the town hall, but sort of with the school and with other different groups in town. So what's your experience?
Well, you know, I had advocated, you know, I got the town hall meetings or the select board meetings to be on YouTube, you know, and that took a bunch of sort of arm twisting. And then I tried to get the other meetings also on YouTube, and I got a very kind of like stiff arm sort of, no, I don't want to be on camera kind of approach. And then COVID happened, and all of a sudden it was like, oh my God. So, you know, I think that is a big step forward. You know, if these meetings are recorded, they're on, you know, on YouTube. If people can join them by, no matter where they are, whether they can walk or drive or whatever, and either listen or even participate, ask questions. So to me, the whole electronic way of doing meetings is far superior to the in-person meeting. I mean, sitting in the select board meetings, I didn't feel like I got a lot out of the meeting compared to like this meeting right here.
Right.
And I think it's much more egalitarian. It's people can hear each other. The remote audience, you know, there was always an issue with the microphones at the select board meeting because people aren't, you know, they're playing to the audience that's there, and online audience is always secondary. So they may be tapping the table and making sounds that the microphones pick up that annoy the outside audience, but they have no idea. There's no feedback to let you know. But if the meeting is virtual to begin with, then people will let you know, hey, the slides you're showing don't show up, or your microphone's not working, or all of that kind of stuff. So to me, that's that's the biggest thing I think that needs to happen.
How do you feel about the is decision making, has it become more transparent then, do you think, because of Zoom?
Not necessarily. Well, I would say somewhat, because you can go and review. Well, the other thing I found was it's a lot of time wasted with the meeting minutes. You have an employee of the town who's sitting there through the meeting. She or he has to be paid to do that. And then there's, they have to spend time typing it all up, and then people have to read it, review it, and the whole thing. If it was recorded, then that's, as far as I'm concerned, that's the meeting minutes. If you want to know what went on, you can actually see, because often these meeting minutes are not, they don't capture a lot of nuance.
Absolutely.
And there's so much effort yet put into creating them. So yeah, I think there's probably more transparency, but of course you still have executive sessions and issues like that. And that's a whole separate can of worms that I really don't know how you would address. I mean, people just have to push on it and maybe file open meeting law complaints and say, hey, I don't really believe that they properly used
You're gonna
executive
get cut
session there.
off, right? We're gonna